this conversation, even as we get to dissect what has been happening both in the youth space, in the government space. I think it is very it's a timely engagement. It's a timely conversation on how best we can chant forward the path of this country. Over to you, Sako.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear my name. My name is Miru Wanjiru. I'm a youth and governance associate. I'm passionate about youth and governance, and what has been happening in the country, it has been a wake-up call that yes, as much as Gen Zs were at the forefront of seeing the systems were not working, it's up to everyone to rise up and see the systems are not working, and holistically pamoja tushikane, because we have seen for a month plus Gen Z leading this war on corruption, on the finance bill, on the impunity bills, and we have seen few other generation join in, and that's why I feel like there is a need for everyone to feel the pinch and join in, so that together holistically we can heal our country. Because yes, the finance bill was just a tip in the iceberg, but we have seen like 2 months before that the doctors had gone on a 61-day strike. We were affected, but very few people joined in. So it's up to us, all of us, to come together, join hands, and continue with this fight so that we can holistically win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sakwa. Thank you to all the speakers. Esther, Mary, Nguka, Brian, I am so proud of you guys. Thank you for leading by example. You went through the leadership program, and now you're leading change in your own spaces, in your own personal lives. I believe you are the people we need to emulate, and I celebrate you, and I thank you so much for showing up today. I'd like to join all of you and all of us. And I also just want to thank every person who has joined in to listen, to participate, to share your feedback, your opinion, your dreams, your fears, your convictions for a better Kenya. Thank you so much for making time to join. So let me just start by saying that as Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa, we believe that we want to create a society in which each and every Kenyan man, woman, child get to live in dignity, and that our society is driven by values-based leaders, and that each and every person will act out of that. Each and every person will be able to live in dignity. That is so critical, and we believe that that is actually possible. At the moment, the levels of poverty are just too high. Some of the things that are not working in our country are just a function of leadership. And so that's why for us at Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa, leadership is the cornerstone of everything. If we are talking about sustainable development, transformational leadership in the health sector, in the education sector, in the food, agricultural industry, in environmental protection, and everything else, the answer lies with leadership. I'd like to actually just start off my remarks by talking about Article 10 that talks about the values of our country, because I think, like Mary said, we elect our leaders, and even as I say this, I note that each and every person is a leader. So each and every one of us is a leader. How are we leading in our spaces, in our families, in our institutions, in our political parties, in our religious institutions. How are we leading? So that is, leadership is very personal, yet it moves from the personal to the collective, the political. Like what they say that the personal is actually very political. Values such as integrity, good governance, patriotism, equity and social justice, transparency and accountability. These are ideals that were set in our constitution because they're practical, they can be done. We can live by this. We can have people in positions of authority and leaders who genuinely care about people, leaders who listen, leaders who lead by example, because it is one thing to say something, it's another totally different thing to actually live it out. So that is the caliber of leaders that Emerging Leaders Foundation gets to churn out, but that is also the kind of leadership we want to see in Kenya and, you know, in Africa. Something else, I feel like as a nation, we are at such a pivotal moment of change, but it is possible that this moment can be lost. That would be tragic. Oh my goodness, that would be tragic. But in making sure that that does not happen, it is actually a collective effort across generations, not just Gen Zs, across generations. Each one of us has a part to play, and the first part is in personal development, personal leadership. How are we leading ourselves? How are we leading in our families? How are we leading in our social circles? How are we leading in our institutions? And then how are we leading in spaces where responsibility has been thrust upon us to lead other people? That is so critical. That then the change we are clamoring for begins with the self. Because the truth is, which is disturbing, this sort of the political class and the business class that are corrupt and some crazy individuals. Do you know that they actually are a mirror image of the citizenry? And so that means that if we want to see change, we have to be that change. That then it means that around election time, we make sure that we're looking for leaders of integrity, leaders with the track record, men and women, young and old, whoever you are, who stand for something and who are ready to pay the price to make sure that Kenyans live in dignity. That is so critical. But then some cosmetic change here and there that sort of we're beginning to see might not serve us in the long run. So as I sum this up, I'd just say that it calls on all of us, and I would call on all of us to be that change that we want to see, so that when we eventually have a political class we're proud of, there will be a representative, a mirror image of who we are. Because at the moment we are complaining about those people, but don't we lie to each other? Don't we, aren't we corrupt? Aren't we the ones who sell one piece of land to 50 people and all the 50 people have actually paid? Aren't we the one who go and bribe here and there to get certificates to run a hotel, a pub, whatever? So that change must begin with us. Let us be the change that we want to see. Thank you so much, and over to you, Sakwa.
Thank you so much for the question. Holistic healing as a country requires where we do a deep self evaluation as a country and see where did we fail, where did the rain start beating us, and start patting our backs as we prepare for a very it might be long and it might be a very difficult journey because it will be very uncomfortable. It will require us as a country to do the unthinkable. And one of the things, it's like what Karen has stated, like if we want to be the change, us being the change, us making that deliberate decision of not being corrupt, of calling out people, of being a representation where like we can get a good representation from us, because currently where we are heading as a country or where we are as a country, it's not a good place. And for us to start now going into the right direction, we have to change and not just pointing, because we are told the minute you're pointing a finger, three are at you. Yes, the leaders, the political class have failed us, but what have we been doing to enable that? We have seen how expensive our politics are. Are we the reason why our politicians, when they get to those positions, they just think about themselves to recover the money they used? We have seen people who are running for office, when they don't get those positions, go bankrupt. Are we part of the problem? If we are part of the problem, what are we going to do better? And another thing is, for holistic healing as a country, we require to take political and civic education seriously. It has gotten to a point where for a while people are not caring as long as their pockets are aligned. We have seen a lot of people say connections work for them, but in real sense, connection in Kenya, it's knowing someone or money exchanging hands. So are we willing to get out of that so that we can get to a point where we as a country, honestly, we can hold ourselves accountable? As Karen has stated, as much as we are putting the blame is on the political class and the people who have been elected, what are we currently doing to enable that? Are we just seeking from a point of we're just looking up onto some few people? An example, Honorable Raila has been a very important person for the revolution for the last 30 years, and we saw his stand on some of the things, and people are very mad. And I was wondering, it's okay, he's just one person. Can he really change how this movement is going? We are 50 million people. Why do we put our convictions on one person? And that's what has become, because we had delegated that the opposition is Raila. But if everyone stood their ground and everyone did their part, we will not have found ourselves feeling demoralized just because a few individuals wanted to get into government, wanted to benefit from what's happening. So it's up to us as a country to start taking up and being active citizens. Our 2010 constitution says, we the people, the power belongs to us. It's up to us, we start taking that power so that we can start that long journey of healing as a country and reforming as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakwa. Thank you, Mary, and thank you all the speakers, including Karen. For this beautiful opening remarks, as well as the contribution. Now, my dream for Kenya is having a Kenya, as I started by saying, where the systems work. And you see, I believe that we already have the constitution, which is a blueprint for all the system that needs to work. So my dream is when the political elite, when the people on whom we've bestowed the power to protect this constitution and to do in everything in its accordance to respect it and really honor it. So my dream is when, our representatives, our MPs, our president, our government will indeed, truly, and to the latter, respect and uphold the Constitution of Kenya, the one which we keep referring to as the new Constitution, 2010. If that is done, then I don't think that we'll really need to come up with other system, come up with commissions. And what sickens me is really that every time our leaders and us as Kenyans, we behave like we didn't know this will happen. When we get to a crisis, like right now, the government thinks that they are in a crisis, but instead of doing that one thing, instead of respecting this constitution, instead of implementing what needs to be implemented, we are still trying to find ways to keep they're still trying to find ways to keep themselves relevant. And I'd really refer back to what Mary was speaking about. you know that dream where a system works is indeed what healing of Kenya looks like. Because the day that the systems will start working for Kenya, the day that the government, the day that the leaders will be accountable and they'll respect the constitution, then we will have healed as a country. The day that the government will implement, instead of coming up with other commission, will implement the recommendations and the reports of the previous um, commission since I think 1998 or 1988, then we will be healing as a country. For example, if you allow me, Sakwa, we had the TGRC report of 2013, and it had beautiful recommendations on how to move on as a country, on how to heal the, past injustices, the human rights violations, from independence to the 2008, eruption. That has never happened to date. It was thrown. I don't know where it was thrown. We have the Waki Commission report of 2008. Nothing has happened. We have the Kriegler Commission, same year. Nothing happened. We have the Ndungu Land report of 2003. When the NAC government came in, and it looked like everything was gonna, work for Kenya, and there were names that were mentioned there. The names that you mentioned in this country, people tremble, and Mwai Kibaki, after the commission visiting every country, having sittings and all that, they threw that Ndungu land report. We have, mention Akiumi Commission report, the one of 1999, which were investigating the ethnic clashes. Some of them happened near me. In fact, in my region, cases were bordering with Masais and Luos, and there was fights all over, clashes, which were caused by the Moi government. Nothing happened. So we can't keep having commissions, as the president was suggesting the other day, that we want to form a broad-based government, we want to have a dialogue, we want commission to sit, everybody will cater for their transportation and so on and so forth. That doesn't work for us. So my dream is for us to implement even the past reports, because they had very key recommendations for us to have a peaceful country, for us to respect the constitution, for us to have really system that work for us. But if we continue saying that we'll do more commissions, we'll do more dialogue, we'll do more of these abracadabra, if I may call them that, then doesn't help us our country. So we need to have political healing, as Mary has talked about. We need to have economic healing. We need to have social healing, where human rights are respected. Up to date, from the awakening of the 1 month where we've been having demonstrations, the government has not, held anybody accountable to the killings, the excesses of the police, the abductions, the violation of human rights. They keep pointing fingers. At one point, it is this uh, human rights organization. At one point is this funder. The other point is Ford, and so on and so forth. We need to have cultural healing, environmental healing, and so on and so forth. Over to you, Sako.
Sakwa, you've muted.
Thank you so much, Sakwa, and thank you so much for the speakers who have shared their sentiments before me, and I completely agree with them. And I'm just going to share that as a Gen Z, I currently have a lot of fears, but I'm going to try to summarize them to just a few. So when I look at the cycle of leadership that has happened, and just recognizing, like for example, being born in a being born and living through a cycle of bad leadership and bad governance, you just get an opportunity, like a front row seat, to see how that is constantly eating away at Kenya, and that the Kenya that we dream of having is becoming further and further away from our reach. So when I do think about the cycle of leadership, some of the and specifically, especially what has been happening right now, some of the fears that I have is first, the possibility of us forgetting why we started fighting in the first place. Because when I think about right now, the reasons that take people, some of the fears that I have, people have different reasons, different convictions as to why they go to the streets, protest, as to why they call out the government, because they feel the pinch differently. Kenyans feel the pinch of bad governance differently. It might be economic, it might be social, and that is why people, after some time, people get fed up, and they feel like the only way that they can be heard by the government is by protesting. And my fear, as I mentioned, is that after some time, we get provided with breadcrumbs, and by breadcrumbs I mean like solutions that do not necessarily match the problems or the challenges that we articulated. And so then after some time, we are forced to settle for these breadcrumbs and forget why we started fighting. And when we forget why we started fighting against the government's systems and structures, it means that we are left at a place where we are continuously opening up the platform for the continuous of bad governance. After some time, when people get tired and see that maybe the government is not listening to the views that people are constantly airing out, people will get tired. And it's because we're also stuck in a cycle of hopelessness. We have had protests before, we have had anti-government protests before, we have had anti-corruption protests before, we have had people coming out to call out these bad systems. But then again, after some time, the country just seems to move on, and we continue to have the same systems that have continuously hurt us over time. So one of my fear is us forgetting why we started in the first place. My second fear is invalidating the processes that are currently happening, the revolution that is currently happening. And I do remember when the whole conversation came up during the protest about how Generation Z was leading the beginning of a revolution, of this revolution that is currently happening. And I remember that different people, even for example, members of parliament, tried to discredit the whole movement by saying, for example, that young people are just doing this so that they can post the videos online and get likes, or young people are just doing this because they are idle and they do not have anything else to do. And I remember something that particularly stuck with me. It was the conversation of how there was one member of parliament, my apologies, I do not remember the name, who mentioned that Gen Zs are arriving at the protest in Ubers and then going to KFC to eat lunch, and having like their own iPhones and such. And the member of parliament was trying to portray the quote unquote privilege that the Gen Z have, and to insinuate that they do not have anything to complain about because they are living a comfortable life. And I remember this particularly stuck with me because then the people are only the people who feel most hurt by the systems responsible. Are they the only ones who have the responsibility to fight the systems that hurt them? And I think something that the current movement have mastered is just identifying all the different things that have constantly divided us as Kenyans, and trying to cover those things up. For example, like the aspect of being leaderless and tribeless. These are aspects that have continuously divided Kenyans and made it hard to actually have one movement of the Kenyan people just working towards a certain goal. And those are some of the things that the current movement is currently mastering, and just identifying that if these are some of the things that divide us, let us try to evade them so that we can have like a very strong movement that is not divided and cannot be shaken by these two aspects. So my second fear, as I mentioned, is the invalidation, because once when the efforts are continuously invalidated, then after some time, the people who are leading these conversations, the people who are constantly fighting for better Kenya, will get tired, and they will lose hope as well, because at the end of the day, we do not expect people to continuously fight in a system that does not recognize their voice, that continuously shuts them down when they raise their voice, when they raise their concerns. So that is my second fear. And my third fear is the quote unquote the arrogance that our current leadership has, and just especially during this time of protest and things like saying the people are not the ones who gave me this position of power, it is my party or my political party that gave me this position, and such things. So such statements take away power from the people, because at the end of the day, people can no longer stand on the fact that we are the ones who gave you power when we woke up early, go to the ballot and vote for you. And we did that to, for example, ensure that, because first of all, we believed in the manifestos that, for example, a person A shared. We believed in the dreams that they put forward for Kenya and for our different areas. And when the members of parliament and even general leaders forget that it is the people who actually put them in power, then they strip away power from the people. And when they strip away this power from the people, it means that the country that we constantly live in will no longer see the inputs of the people as important, because at the end of the day, one does not need to specifically really do anything for the people to continue being in power. They just need to inputs of the people as important. Spread at the end of the day breadcrumbs, because one does not need the bar, unfortunately, is very low on good leadership in Kenya. Really, and when we are given a few breadcrumbs being in power, they just become okay with that. Spread so I think breadcrumbs are my because at the bar, unfortunately, is very low on good leadership in Kenya. And when we are given a few breadcrumbs, convictions, I strongly believe that change can happen. I think change does not happen in one day, and it's three main fears. And it's important to recognize that this is a great start to change. Recognizing all the issues I strongly believe have been change can happen, feeding into the cycle of bad governance, as I mentioned, bad leadership, and just trying to this is a great start to change. Recognizing all the issues, holistic view of these issues have been breaking them down and feeding into the cycle of bad different solutions to all these issues, bad leadership. So just so that when we are moving forward, we are able to have a Kenya holistic that will work for future generations, breaking them down, and just for example, and coming up with different solutions. The person who plants the tree might not necessarily be the person who enjoys forward. We are able to create a Kenya when we are looking at it from that point of view. It's okay for us to, for example, even if it takes us long, the person who plants the tree that might not necessarily be the person who enjoys our constant calls for when we are looking at it from that point of view. It's okay for us to continue fighting, even if it takes us long. Even if it means that the fruits of our constant calls for accountability will be enjoyed by the next generation, it's completely worth it. So those are my thoughts. Thank you. Back to you, Sakwa.
Thank you very much, Esther, for your very comprehensive thoughts and how you have clearly put out your fears. I want to allow Brian Kithinji, who's joined one of the speakers, to just quickly introduce himself and give us his quick thoughts. Brian, when in view of our subject for today, the dreams, the fears, and convictions in reshaping Kenya, if you could just ride on that topic to make your opening thoughts, and then I will go back to Karen with a question.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, can everyone hear me? I believe.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Brian Kithinji. I'm the Director of Policy Action Initiative. And at Policy Action Initiative, we always have the mantra that we want more young people to be involved in policy making processes. And we do so through research. We go and collect data. We also publish policy briefs. And we also do capacity building to train our fellow young people on policy making skills. And this topic for me, when I saw it, and Stephen called me yesterday and asked me whether I may be able to do it, I rushed and I said yes. And because we are at a time when this discussion that we are having, we should have had it, I believe, 50 years back at independence time. Because if I was to ask everyone here in the call, what is the Kenyan dream? Like when you go to America, there's the American dream that was written by James Truslow. Like, liberty, freedom, all that is part of the American dream. When you go to France, there's a French dream. They have the three words, égalité, and the other two, égalité, liberté, yeah. When you go to UK, when you go to Japan, you go to China, there's a definition of what it is that an average Chinese, when they are born, that they aspire to be. But in Kenya, we don't have that, because we cannot say that the Kenyan dream is you grow, you get a good education, get a degree, and you get a job. That cannot be the Kenyan dream, because when we look around, we don't see avenues for upward mobility for young people. We see many people with jobs, and yet they didn't pass through education. So that can be the definition of the Kenyan dream. So for me, my dream as a young person who has been lucky to be part of the policy making processes is I want to live in a country where we have a system of values. We know that these are the processes. These are the steps that I can take, and I'll also have 544 billion. I'll be worth 544 billion, like the incoming interior CS. We know that these are the steps that I can take, and I will also be a millionaire chicken farmer like our president. So personally, I want to live in a place where these processes are clear. But also, most importantly, I also want to live in a place where there is equality under the law. And this is something which is very serious, because even I was having a discussion with a friend the other day that even when you look at the protest where the police went and gave out the most harsh brutality, like where most of the killings happened, you didn't see police going. You will never. I don't know if it's ever happened in our lifetime that you will see police going to Kilimani and beating up people, or police going and using live bullets in Karen, let's say, or in Runda. You don't see that. So you wonder, isn't it that it is part of the code, or is it that they know that they can easily get away because these are poor people? I mean, people in pipeline, they don't have access to the top lawyers. Even if they had it, they don't have the court fees. Like they don't have the say in order to put their positions at risk when they go and met out that brutality. And I've even seen it. I come from Mombasa. There was a time that kids at Oshwal wanted to do a protest. The police came and they gave them all the security. But I remember whenever Technical University of Mombasa, they went out and protested, you would see the police coming with all the vans, kicking, beating people. So you wonder, is it the same? Like, it's like we have two-tier systems of justice. And that has also spread to opportunities. So you find that there are opportunities like government scholarships. I don't know how many people know, but the government actually, there are scholarships that the government provides. But if I was to walk today to the Ministry of Education, I will not get it. Even if I have all the A's and a first-class degree, I will not get it. So my dream is to live in a place where there is equality and there are clear avenues for upward mobility. And so based on these dreams, for me, my biggest fear, especially at this moment in this reawakening that you have had, is that we end up in a process where we have the wrong people. And this is something that hurts me, because I always say that it is not that youth are not represented. It is that we have the wrong youth in those positions, because everyone has been to parastatals. Go to any parastatal. I'm sure even Madam Karen can also attest to it. There are young people who are working there, but things don't change. It's because they are also part of the system. We have the wrong people who go, majority, I'm not saying all, majority go into those positions. They don't deserve it. So if they don't deserve to be in that place, they're not going to bring any change. So I have the fear that even now we are going to be told like, okay, we have a young person who's going to be the new CS. But when you look at the qualifications, you're like, I know there are better young people, even at 25 years old, who can contribute better based on their experience and based on their profile. So for me, my biggest fear is that we end up continuing the process of having the wrong people in the name of affirmative action or in the name of spreading opportunities to young people. Yes. My second fear is that it's based on the iceberg theory, and that if you want to deal with a problem, you have to go to the bottom. Like, you just can't come at the level of the water and cut the iceberg. You have to go to the root and cut it off. And majority of the times in Kenya, whenever we want to solve issues, we approach the iceberg from the top instead of approaching it from the bottom. So for now, it is not having people in office, it is looking at the laws. Like, for example, the ID cards. Let's go back to the Registration of Persons Act of 2012. Let's look at what it says in terms of allocation of IDs, in terms of the process. If somebody has to go to achieve, to verify community, etc., it means that communities who are in the rural areas or even in the informal settlements, they are going to find it hard to get the ID, regardless of the renewal thing. So let's go to the root causes of our policy. Like, we still have the penal code, which was instituted in the colonial rule, and so many other restrictive laws, including even having kanjos going around and locking up young people doing businesses. So for me, if we don't deal with it, that becomes a problem. I think I'll end for there and we shall proceed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brian, for your submissions. And I want to pick up from something you have said and take it. We have young leaders. Karen had mentioned that the leaders are the mirrors of society. And we see more young people being put into certain positions. And when they get there, or rather youthful people get into positions, and when they get there, Brian, if you could mute, Brian, if you could kindly mute. When they get there, we get quickly assimilated into the status quo. And Brian has mentioned that we always end up with the wrong people in leadership. We have the young people have the wrong representatives. Mary, why do you think we get to this point? How do we end up having what we would call the wrong representatives of the young people in positions of influence? And what do we need to do differently?
Sakwa, did you call out my name? Did you pose that to me?
Yes, Mary.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question. I think the reason why we end up having the wrong people as the representation is because politicians groom the rowdy young people straight from university. So by the time they're even coming to the national level, it's not about them being leaders, it's about them being politicians and doing politics. Like, they are groomed to be in a certain way. And it's so unfortunate because you see the young people who are passionate and want good things, they don't have that political backing. And in this case, the monetary backing for them to be in those rooms. You have to really be believe in yourself and have a very big backing for you to get into some of this room. An example, just the other day, we saw when the president was calling for having a meeting with the Gen Z, we saw one of the people, a few young people going to front themselves. And these people are already in the UDA, but they're young people. They're already being used as political puppets. But another thing I believe it's because the people who know, who have the leadership qualities and want best, don't really want to get into politics, because there is a narrative that has been driven for a very long time. Politics is a dirty game. And for people who have their, I don't want to say dignity, but they're cautious and they know what's right and do things right by the book, don't really want to get dirty. So the young people who really want to get dirty get to be fronted as they front for other young people. So this is more of a wake-up call to all of us who are the young people who believe in themselves to start taking up spaces, so that we can have representative of young people who are good, and young people who have good qualities, who have leadership qualities. We don't want representation from politicians, because for them, they'll always take up the room, because for them, it's about what is it in for them, and they're willing to do anything to get into those positions of power. Hope I've done the question justice.
Thank you very much, Mary. And indeed, if there will be anyone who wants to add to that question, we will allow them opportunity. In the next maybe 7 minutes, we'll open the floor for everyone. But I want to go to Karen before I come back to Esther and Nguka, and then and then Brian. Then I open up the floor. Karen, you said that the fear is that momentum can be lost. We can lose the momentum of this movement. And Esther, in enumerating her fears, one of the fears she put forward is that we might forget why we went to the streets. So the question, from your perspective, what do you think the young people, those who are clamoring for change and a new order of doing things, what do we need to do today? What do we need to do every day, both individuals and formations and organizations, to keep the movement alive and the conversation going?
Thank you, Sakwa. If you allow me, I'd like to also respond to the question you asked, Mary, what Brian raised, that we have either majority or some of the wrong young leaders in positions of leadership representing young people. That's really interesting, and yes, Mary, you have given some of the reasons why that is the case, and why a number of young people would say, or even just all the people basically engaging in politics, they would say, oh no, politics is a dirty game, I don't want to engage, and all that. But I would say maybe I should actually ask the question, how badly do we want change in our country? How badly do we want that change? If we want it so badly, we would be ready to pay the price to make sure the right people get into those political parties, the right people get to understand, civically their role, their duties, and get to run for office, get to be agents during voting and elections. They get to be election observers. They get to play an active role. So I would say that I think I would call on us to be courageous enough to say, you know what, I have a calling to lead change in this space or in the political space, or if not, identify those who have a calling and a passion to lead change in that space and support them, finance their campaigns, give them materials to read, hold them to account, support their personal leadership journeys, mentor them, coach them, and support them. And once they get into office, it will then also be easy to still hold them to account. But if we don't support some of the values-based leaders that we have, great men and women and young people that we have in our society that we know stand for the right thing. They lead with integrity. They respect people and honor people, and the contracts they have with the electorate. Then this would be a lost game. That every year, every decade, we will keep complaining, saying we have the wrong people in these positions, but where are the right people? Where are the values-based leaders? I would actually challenge us, please go get into those spaces. And a lot of times, by the way, elections are never lost on election day. It's during nomination. And that is when a number of us usually sit back and say, oh no, I don't want to be political, or I don't want the chaos that come with the nomination processes, the primary process. So we let other people go. But that's where the wrong people get to mobilize goons and their people and transport and ferry some people to go and vote for them. And the right people will be there and they'll be all alone and lost. So I think we need to do the hard work. We have to do the hard work. The other bit about having the wrong young people in positions of leadership, I would say, where are the right young people? I see many of you here. Are you visible enough? The work you're doing, the change you have been leading, the values you live out, are you visible enough on your social media accounts, your engagement with the people you lead, whether it's a community, whether it's at school, university, or at home in the different counties? Are you visible enough? Let me give you a personal example. So I got appointed to join the board of NACADA in my final year at the University of Nairobi. I served for 3 years, then later joined the board of African Peer Review Mechanism, where again, I was a representative for young people. And then from there, I got appointed as the first chairperson of Nairobi County Youth Oversight Board that had representation of young people from different sectors, different organizations, and different political parties. That was a really, really, really tough role. I remember one day receiving a call from a young leader, and he told me, Karen, you come from Bungoma County. You should be leading Bungoma County Youth Board. How come you've come all the way from Bungoma and you're leading the Nairobi County Youth Board? Does it mean there were no qualified young people in Nairobi County to lead Nairobi County, and provide advisory to the governor and the leadership of the county towards supporting young people? And that formed a really interesting conversation. But then I had a track record of providing leadership and all that. But tied to close to that is a conversation I had with one of my mentors. She told me, Karen, you have been providing leadership in this youth space and you serving in this board, that board, representing young people. Who are you raising to take over from you? How many young people are you raising, and that you will be able to pass the baton to them, and you will be very sure that these are leaders of integrity. They will represent youth voices and make sure there's change and lead with integrity. And that was an interesting challenge that took me to reflection. And then, of course, a few years later, we got to start the Emerging Leaders Foundation, where we provide leadership training and mentorship for young people across sectors, for them to lead change where they are, discover their mission, purpose, and just be the best they can be in life. So I just wanted to, Sakwa, respond to that question as well. So I would actually challenge the young leaders: be visible, leave the talk, have a track record, be consistent year in, year out, be consistent in what you believe in the work you do. Even when you do not see results in a year, 2 years, 3 years, stick it out, hang in there. You will definitely see results at some point. So Sakwa, you asked me the question about momentum. How do we keep momentum to make sure there's tangible, sustainable change, in this season and beyond? Number one, I would say, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. Let's keep talking to each other. And beyond talking, we need actionable steps. And I would actually challenge young people on this call. And like I said earlier, this is not making Kenya better is not a battle for one generation. No, it's for every generation. It's for every person. It is just that younger people have higher stakes in this, because then the present belongs to them, the future belongs to them. So the stakes are higher, but it's the responsibility of everybody. So beyond the talking, there's need to take action. Action at the national level, action at the county level, action at the institutional level. There are many institutions that require reforms and require change. So, and I love how the Gen Zs have been doing it. They come up with this list and say, we want this to be changed, this to be transformed, leaders of integrity here and there. And you know, they work to follow through. I would say that we keep that momentum to make sure that there's holistic, sustainable change that is happening, even if it is in small steps, small bits. It is a positive, it is definitely positive, and we must keep going to then make sure that eventually we achieve the change we want to see. We get to live in the Kenya that Brian, Esther, Mary, and Guka were describing earlier on. Number two, I am intrigued by what Brian said. Brian, you talked about the Kenyan dream, and you made reference to the American dream, the French dream, and all that. I would actually say, yeah, I've actually never imagined of a Kenyan dream, and maybe this would be one of the assignments for you young people, you young leaders, and all of us as Kenyans to say, can we, as we are defining the Kenya we want to see, reshaping the ideal Kenya, that maybe we should actually begin drafting and having conversations with other people to get to define what is the Kenyan dream. What does a Kenyan dream look like? And what does one need to do to then get to achieve that Kenyan dream? I think it will be something really good and aspirational. Number three, I would say that we continue pushing for accountability and transparency. I like how this has been happening through at the ward level, at the constituency level, county level, in our different religious institutions. And it's really interesting that then even the political class are sitting back and are like, oh my goodness, I can't continue playing games anymore. And like one of the speakers said, and let me paraphrase her words, that poverty is actually a weapon. Poverty is a tool that politicians use to make sure they perpetuate themselves in office. And so that means economic empowerment of the Kenyans and just getting each and every one of us to live in dignity would then get us to have sufficient time to interrogate our systems and say, is this serving us? Is this not serving us? What do we need to change? But for as long as we have people going on an empty stomach in a day, they have no food, people are dying, children are sick, they can't access medication, mothers can't access hospitals to give birth. And as long as we have this bread and butter daily issues that we struggle with, that robs us the opportunity to actually have higher, bigger imaginations for ourselves and for our country, and to even begin to say, how can I play a role in nation building to change my country? So we need to keep pushing for that accountability. And as we push for it, let us also be accountable. Because it is one thing, just like I said earlier, it's one thing to say so and so needs to change, this office needs to change, this institution needs to change. But how are we living our own lives? How are we leading our own institutions? How are we ensuring that we are accountable in the small or big roles that we get to hold in different spaces? So I would also say that we be accountable so that then we even know what accountability smells like, what it looks like, what it feels like, to then be able to demand for it. And finally, keeping momentum, I would say partnership with the media would also be critical. That social media is a great platform, but I would say that partnership with mainstream media, print media, broadcast media would also be critical, so that then the conversations are going on, conversations in schools, in universities, in our families, in religious institutions, that we normalize having these conversations, and not that we only have these conversations when there's a crisis. No, let's normalize having these conversations every single day, everywhere, wherever we find ourselves. Thank you, and over to you, Sakwa.
The way they should. And just to go back to the very comprehensive remarks that Karen and Mary have shared about the reason why, for example, we end up having neither the Kenyans nor the leaders know what good leadership is supposed to look like. And I say this because let's think about it this way. For example, when we are voting, for example, for our local area member of parliament, when you try to listen to them, they do have a very basic idea. Some of them have a very basic idea of what their role is when they do, what their role will be when they do get that position. And also us as the people, we also have a very basic idea, unfortunately, of what their role is. So at the end of the day, we are on two sides of a spectrum, not knowing what the people are they against our constitution? Are they against the values of Kenya? Are they against the things that we would want to see for Kenya? Are they against the future that we are trying to build for Kenya? And by recognizing the gaps that we currently have, we are able to develop solutions for them. And then when we do have these solutions, we'll be able to put them side by side by the leaders we want to have in the future. So if a leader comes on, for example, is vying for a political seat and shares their manifesto and everything, you can be able to check against all the things that we have identified as gaps and see, is this person really going to work to better Kenya? Is this person going to make Kenya worse? Is this person going to make Kenya remain at the same spot that it has been for years, which is currently the case, because we constantly get a new bill, unfortunately, of bad leaders who either stagnate Kenya more, take Kenya backwards, or even create unimaginable problems for Kenya that the next generations are continuously going to have to deal with. So we need to recognize what we deserve as the first point. We need to discover what we do deserve as Kenyan people from the leaders that we elect and from the leaders who are leading different institutions. And the leaders need to also know comprehensively and into detail the role that they have to play in order to ensure that they are meeting their mandate. When this happens, we will be able to have like a system that is able to monitor and evaluate leadership from a very different perspective, where power remains with the people. The power to make decisions, the power to check whether leadership is going as it's supposed to be, whether leaders are doing what they're supposed to do and what they said to do remains with the people. And it will no longer be the Kenyan people continuously having to maybe, for example, even protest continuously and just have to be subjected to things such as police brutality when they do protest, when they do exercise their rights, being made to feel as if they are committing crimes when they do exercise their rights, and just basically the Kenyan people knowing that at the end of the day, the power lies with them, because the Constitution of Kenya did not lie when it gave all the power to the people. And lastly, I think what we need to do is to look at leaders and the Kenyan people as one, because I think the fact that we separate these two entities, then we are creating two different worlds. Because a leader is basically someone who, for example, when we think about political leadership, a member of parliament is someone from a specific constituency who is voted in by people to represent them. So it's just one of those people. It's one of the people who is selected, that is, to represent the other people. So when we recognize that these leaders are part of us, and they should not be far away from us as the people who are continuously the Kenyan people who continuously require their services as we give them the platform to represent us. When we recognize that we are the same, it will give us an opportunity to have more dialogue, more constructive dialogues, and also be continuously willing to share the needs that we have, continuously willing to call out mistakes that might happen, and also just give the leaders an opportunity to continuously check their leadership against what we want as Kenyans, and continuously improve the systems that they're putting in place to ensure that they are achieving what they set out to achieve. So thank you so much, Sakwa. I hope I was able to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. Very quickly to Nguka, I want to open up to the floor. But Nguka, Karen asked a question: how badly do we want the change? And I want you to think about that question as you also tell us the change that we want. What is the cost? As you have observed the protests, the movement. What is the cost of what has been the cost of the movement to the young people of Kenya?
Thank you, Sakwa, for that question. And thank you, everyone, every speaker and everyone who's contributing, even in the tweets. The cost has been tragic, and the cost is irreparable. So far, the cost of the movement, I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but I've seen a lot of young people, Gen Zs, millennials, and even some younger people who are not even Gen Zs losing their lives. That's one of the irreparable cost, because even if one faction of the political parties joins the government, as it looks like, and they call for justice, I don't know how repairable is the death of a young person who only died because they were asking and they were tasking the government that they should hold accountable to do the right thing. That's the only thing that the young people have been asking, that do the right thing, honor the constitution, create systems that can work. Or they are saying that we don't want this, do public participation, which is in the constitution, and do public participation for what it really means, not for your own selfish gains. So I feel like the cost has been tragic, but as Karen asked, just sitting with that question, what are you willing to do to see that better Kenya? What are you willing to do? What are we young people, millennials, Gen Zs, Generation Alpha, and every Kenyan, what are we willing to do to see the better Kenya that we want, for us to reshape the Kenya and paint it in the colors that we want it to be, and box it in the boxes that we want it to be, if I may use that kind of analogy. What are we willing to do? I think if we are able to answer that question, then it can even answer the question of fears, the fears that we have. Karen has said that I fear that this may amount to nothing if we don't keep it objective. I think Mary or Esther have mentioned that they fear that this will amount to nothing, or it will just wither down, and that is what I feel the political um, augmentation of broad-based government, as the president calls it. He's just broadened his political reach by rewarding our leaders. And looking at it from a political angle, this, even though Mary asked, Raila is one person, I think it's Mary or Esther asked that Raila is one person, and we should not peg all our ambitions, all our aspirations to him, because he's decided, to be rewarded, or to reward his loyalist, as a as a as a result of this demonstration, something that people didn't foresee, right? But when the president broadens his political reach, then it means that if we don't get back to that question, that what cost are we willing to pay, then the young people, might be, their voice might be shuttered down if they don't get to be resilient, if they don't get to be objective, and if they don't get to do what it really takes to reshape our country. And if you allow me, for me, reshaping that, one of the costs that we need to pay is stay objective. Another cost that we need to pay is think what next. By staying objective, you're thinking what next. While we don't have systems, and while we are calling out some of the things that don't work for us, then what does it look like? If all that we are asking for, if all that Gen Zs are asking for are implemented to the latter, what does it look like? Is it the Kenya we want? Are there enough systems? Funny thing was that if after, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of demonstration, is when now the president came up with a recommendation from the commission, or from the dialogue that they were having within the parties, and they started the process of having laws on, or having pointers on how they will form the IEBC. So in the event that we pushed the president to the level of resigning, as the Gen Zs were calling him to resign, then you find that even with the constitution, we are weighing between two lesser evils, because we as agreed, as Esther has mentioned, that from the question you asked, that do our leaders represent the Kenya we want? Then it's no. So even if the president goes, we have another evil, on quote unquote evil, of which a lot of people fear Gachagwa's presidency, and so on. So for me, I feel like for us, we really need to be objective, and we really need to keep pushing. There's nothing wrong with agitating and asking the government to be accountable. There's nothing wrong with agitating and really fighting and asking for better. And I feel like young people, young leaders, young governance enthusiasts, and advocates, we should not settle for less. We should not settle for less in terms of governance, and this should be, should trickle down even to the counties. It should trickle down even to the constituents, even to the wards. That if the leadership that you've put in, the leadership to whom you've bestowed power, to represent you, don't work for you, then it is our responsibility to, have, or it is our civic responsibility to do social accountability by keeping our leaders on check. Let us not just leave it to the assemblies, but let us keep engaging, and let us, keep advocating and agitating till we get the better Kenya that can work for us. And to me, this merit-based leadership and governance is one of the better Kenya that I'm envisioning. So if there's no merit, as Brian mentioned, that there's no equality, that you just look for somebody whom you can reward with something. For example, the president, if you allow me, was asked to
Um,
disband his
30 seconds.
cool, to disband his government ministers, and uh, appoint technocrats, appoint people based on merit. But what does he do? He broadens the government, or by broadening his um, political muscle. So let's have meritocracy. Let's have educational reforms that can work for us. Let us have economic empowerment. Let us have public participation and civic engagement for what it really is, not for what we want it to be. And let us have social justice and equity, because without justice, then we can only be having conversations, we can only be engaging, but nothing to show for it. So I feel those are the price that's the price, and that's the cost that you need to pay. Over to you, Sako.
Thank you very much, Nguka. I am, and all the speakers, indeed, I am moving to the second part as we near the close, where we'll have the plenary ask questions or contribute. And the first one here who has the mic, I see, is One to Sichome. I will give you an opportunity in a minute. Let me just read a few comments in the comment section here. I see Danny Gona saying we have to do the hard work right now. Visibility is very important. Bilo Kwolden, projecting Kenya to the next level requires collective effort. Gen Z can't achieve the transformation goal single-handedly. Deborah Sitowet, we have to demystify the belief that politics is a dirty game. Let value-based leaders run for these elective positions rather than leaving them to the politicians' projects. And Temo Bito, this is powerful. Nothing KE Kenya has great potential indeed. Over to you, Lodge, to cue the speakers. Let's start with Tusichome. I see a request from Ken Wakia. Tuesday is Tuesday. Anthony Murevi. Tusichome, you have 2 minutes to make your contribution or ask your question, starting now. All right, I think he has dropped off. Something has happened to him. Or Tusichome, if you can hear me. All right, as we wait for him to get that fixed, we can take the next person. Anthony Murithi, you can unmute and just proceed. I don't know if Anthony can hear me. Lodge Robert, you can just let me know on the other side if I am missing out on these comments, contributions. Let's take care.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you very much for giving me the mic. Mine will be very short. I'll just say that I really appreciate this space, which seems to be far much better than the spaces I have been in. I mean, there's much more objective reasoning here. And I just want to tackle the title of this space in 2 minutes. And one, you've talked about the fears, the dreams, and the convictions of reshaping Kenya. And first of all, my congratulations go to the Gen Zs who have given us really a breath of fresh air in the Kenyan politics and in Kenyans' push for democratic governance. It was beautiful to see, a large number of youths walking down the streets peacefully. And then, of course, the usual unfortunate events happened, which were really uncalled for. And I will say my biggest fear, especially when I saw the events of June 25th, my biggest fear has been really the Gen Z's movement in underestimating the power of corruption. You know, when I saw the organization. I saw the movement calling for demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations. All of a sudden, I became really optimistic about my country, Kenya. And that optimism went up in smoke when I saw the reaction of the government. But I would say that there was something, and there still is that something in the air for me, that the movement is really underestimating the power of corruption, because corruption has the ability to fight in really brutal ways. And my heart really collapsed when I saw the government's reaction, which essentially is the power of corruption. Because if you get in the way of corruption, sometimes the repercussions are really out of the world. I would like to give one dream that I have for our country. There have been so many commissions in the country for so many years, and so Kenya does not lack the brains. Kenya does not lack leaders. Kenya does not lack the optimism of its citizens. You know, if you refer back to history, you'll realize that we have had so many commissions, including the TJRC Commission. In my opinion, or rather in my dream, I would like to see Kenya open up those files of the TJRC Commission and really starting to implement some of the recommendations in those commissions. I will not go too far into talking about the contents of those of the commissions, but I see a circle of things, because every time we agitate for young people to take over leadership in the country, this is never new. At the end of the day, you find that the government of the time incorporates youthful leaders, it incorporates young leaders, but then we end up with the same issues. We end up at the same point where we started. And so, you know, when I look at the calls for Gen Zs, which are really valid, and I think any government worth its salt needs to listen. But then in those calls that we should incorporate young people, there's also the other side saying, you know, that we don't want to have leaders, because if we have leaders, then those leaders are going to be bought. If we have leaders, then those leaders are going to be targeted in one way or the other. In other words, we know where we want to go to, but we really fear to go there. And we know where we want to go to, but we really are doubtful of the people who are with us. We really doubt that John can take us to the next level, because we think if we appoint John as our leader, then he's going to be corrupted. So at the end of the day, you find that we really contradict ourselves. You know, we want responsible leaders. We want leaders who can stand the test. But yet again, we do not want to put them forward, or rather, we do not want to come forward to show that leadership because we fear being corrupted. And one of the
Ken,
speakers.
if I could ask you to summarize in 30
Okay.
seconds.
Yes, I will do. So I've already told you about my fears, which is that the Gen Zs underestimated the power of corruption. My dream is to see Kenya implement the findings of the TJRC commissions, or rather strengthen a good Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. And I also wish that the Gen Zs could evolve into a more structured outfit, because you know, if you're going out to lobby, you're going out to negotiate, you're going out to play with the big boys, then you will need structures, and you will need to show people that leadership that you're asking for. Do not fear to come up with structures. Do not fear to come up with the leaders, because you're thinking they're going to be corrupted. If you get a leader in there who is then eventually corrupted, then throw them out. Throw them out, as you're calling for the other leaders to be responsible. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for giving me the mic.
Thank you very much, Ken. We pass the mic on to Sichome Nchi. If you could unmute, and then to Sichome Nchi will be followed by Tuesday, my friend Habib Omala, and then we will move on to Anthony Murithi and see if we have. I see nothing. KE and Andreas will be next after Anthony Murithi. So to Sichome Nchi, endelea. All right, hiyo mic imekataa kabisa. Keep, I don't know if you're able to help Tusichome Nchi in the back end to see if we can have their mic up. As Keep helps with that, let us go on to who was coming next. I think it was Habib. Not Tuesday. Please go ahead. You have just about 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Sakwa. I don't know if you can be able to hear me.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. First, allow me to be able to appreciate for this timely conversation, which is very, very important, with also the aspect of the happenings of the country. And allow me also to appreciate the previous speakers in terms of the contribution and how they have contributed to the conversation. And I agree with them on various ideas and the insights that they have been able to give out. I think we are in a critical point, and one, as a community organizer, as someone who has been on the street several times, first of all, something that I'm happy about is seeing Kenyans, active citizens, and young people coming out and taking back their power and agitating and advocating for a better country, not only for them, but for the future generation, which is something that is something that need to be embraced and find a way on how we can continue with the momentum. However, there is one thing to be able to envision and dream for a better Kenya, but also there is one thing to be able to work towards a better Kenya. Change comes with a price tag, and the question that we actually need to ask ourselves right now is how many Kenyans are ready and willing to be able to pay the price tag that comes with the change, because young people actually they compose the majority of the population of this country, and majority of them are also voters. But why do we keep on getting it wrong at the ballot box? Why is it that we all continue? Because I heard the speakers asking, why do we continue? Is it that we do not have young leaders in various leadership positions, but are we seeing the change that we're yearning for, or we have been advocating for? Or you get in and then you cease to be hungry as a young person once you get at the eating table. So there's a number of things that we must be able to ask ourselves as a country. And I think it trickles down, it boils down to the aspect of the values. And at one point when I was going through the ABLI program, there's something that we were taught about the aspect of competency and character. And when you're looking for a leader, you either go for both of them, competency and character. But where competency is lacking and you have character, you better go for character, because at the end of the day, I always love this quote where Thomas Sankara once said, soldier without ideology is a potential criminal. So basically it all trickles down to what is it that one thing that you stand for as a leader? And until we get it right at the ballot box, we'll continue having the same complaints and the same problem, because what informed our choices when we got the ballot box Do we elect people based on their policies, based on their manifestos, based on their characters and even the values and what they stand for, or do we elect them based on the tribal and the political thing that we always do as Kenyans? So I think it is high time that also we must be able to reevaluate our values and rethink of the Kenya that we want. But more so, what my biggest worry right now, yes, we are seeing my biggest fear worry could be Kenya turning to be a police state, the, the civic space being shrinked. But the biggest worry with the Gen Z movement and the agitation of young people is how many young people are willing to pay the price tag? How many young people are liberal enough that they can make independent decision beyond their tribal leaders? How many young people are ready to forego the handout and the politics of tokenism and the mileage that comes with being associated with the big political players? So we must be actually be deliberate in terms of what we want and be ready and to forego some of the things, be just ready to forego some of the things if actually we want the real change that we are yearning for as a country. We must be intentional, we must be deliberate. But more so is us not allowing ourselves to be consumed by now the aspect of the political class ganging up, because somehow the agitation and the young people coming together and active Kenyans becoming citizens becoming more active and engaging on issues of governance make the political players a bit worried because their interest is at stake. But
Habib,
how then?
Habib, if you can
Yes,
hear me, I'd like you to wind up in 30 seconds.
yeah, just winding up is how do we diffuse the aspect of the political players maybe organizing around the aspect of tribalism and the political parties perspective, but how do we actually organize ourselves, structure ourselves in a way that we can be able to continue with the agitation and the goal that we aim of a better Kenya? Back to you, Sako.
Environment and very instrumental in the national tree growing campaigns.
Thank you very much, Habib. I want to move on to the next person, who is Anthony Morethi. And then after Anthony, we have Nothing KE. Yeah, Nothing KE. And then we'll take the last two and we go to this back to the speakers for closing remarks. So Anthony Morethi, Nothing KE, and then we take the final two. Anthony? I'm not sure if Anthony can hear me. If Nothing KE, you're ready, you can go ahead.
out. So the reason why we need to overhaul the system, because it is set to fail. That's why we have good people coming on board, but we have to be real to the reality of things. There are people who are willing to sell this movement for change, and we should not allow the wolves in sheepskin to come through. Because, like, I look at some people's timeline, they don't even share and retweet about the missing, but they are ready to become leaders. So I think we should look into walking this journey. Nothing prepared us for where we are today. And the people who actually knew what they were doing were the Gen Zs, but unfortunately, they're not the majority when it comes to the voices we hear when we come on board. And because the previous generation are preconditioned to how the society should be, you should have a leader. It brings the fragmentation that unless we actually match up to these people, then we don't have our house in order. I'm a student. We are aware that there are people who are canvassing and very hard, but we are very unbothered about those who want to form a party, those who want to instill leaders. Somebody talked about character. It will be a while before we can know people for who they are. There are so many leaders coming up. There's Galma who's advocating on the streets. So if people want to be leaders, you can't be a leader because you want to become a leader. You will be a leader because you're willing to roll up your sleeve, get your hands dirty. So as much as we are beginning to feel, we need everybody on board. We are beginning to feel like there are people who are still aligning themselves to where we are running away from, which is structures that are set to fail. People who talk about, oh, you should get funding. We should demonetize our politics so that we get the right people in office, people who are willing to serve. We should make sure that people have the facility. Nobody should campaign on basic needs like water, electricity, and shelter and food.
Okay, if you can hear me, I'd like to give you 30 seconds to close.
Okay, so my closing remarks will be, please share the photos of those who are missing, because it's one way of standing with their family. 2, be patient, allow yourself to be uncomfortable, and wander on this journey as a Kenyan. Where we fail, let's be willing to make amends, because we are as strong as our weakest link. So let's not hypothesize, because what people are doing, you're hypothesizing the process instead of allowing us to go through it. And in the end, we'll have written the history of our country through fear, through our imagination, different conviction. But in the end, what held us together was the fact that we all knew we wanted a better Kenya. If somebody had a script on how we should do it, then it would have made the journey easier. But the reality of things depart very far from the status quo and what the journey looks like. So let's continue agitating. We deserve better and we can achieve that. Thank you.
We deserve better, and indeed we can achieve it together. Last 2 people to speak is Anthony Mureithi and Dennis Chege. Anthony, if you can hear me, you have the mic for the next 2.5 minutes. As the speakers begin to prepare their closing, I will come back to you for 30 seconds each. Anthony Mureithi, if you can hear me. Okay, looks like Anthony Mureithi cannot hear me. So let me go to Dennis Chege to close this for us. Dennis? I see Baraza has also gotten speaker rights. Dennis?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Dennis. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Asanteni sana. Thank you for enabling this forum for us to discuss about the dreams, fears, and the convictions in reshaping this country, especially after what has just happened in our democracy, as you're all aware. And I appreciate each and everyone's comments and suggestions on this platform. We know that our democracy has been shaken to its foundations by the Gen Zs. For the first time in our country, we have seen a movement that is very organic. We have seen an organization of ideas that have merged in one voice, and all of us are asking and talking about good governance. Everyone is talking about constitutionalism and accountability. And because you are the Emerging Leaders Foundation, and I think this is a great opportunity for all of you to just take advantage of the gaps that we have seen. We have all interacted with the Gen Zs. We know what they want. We've listened to them, apart from maybe the executive, but I'm sure all of you have heard their voices, and it's very clear on what they're asking for. It's important for us, those of us who have been in the political spaces, those of us who have been in the civil society, those of us who have been active citizens, to take initiative and be able to guide our younger generation that is coming up. Let's call them the Gen Zs in this case. It's important that we start planning and organizing ourselves in such a way that we are able to provide leadership, guidance, and direction to our youthful siblings who are behind us, not popularly known as the Gen Zs. But of course, we understand that all the issues they're discussing affects everyone from Generation X to even our alpha, our children who are behind us, right? So it's very important for us to be able to group ourselves. And I'll suggest that for us to do this effectively, we need to go to our county level so that we're able to have teams that are able to coordinate, plan, and execute civic education in order to teach, educate, and even just get to understand the political process in Kenya. What the Gen Zs have done is that they have shaken the foundations of our democracy. We have grown up. I'm speaking as a millennial. Allow me. I'm not a Gen Z, but as a millennial, I grew up in a political system where ethnicity, money defined our political decisions at the ballot. So in this case, you are guided to vote on a political direction depending on your ethnic background or your economic background. Kama umechotewa, hivyo ndio utavote. And for many years, we know that politicians have thrived on this very barbaric political, what do I call it? I don't have the right word. I don't want to sound vulgar, but they have been using and abusing our political rights by taking advantage of our poor economic setups, backgrounds, by buying our votes. And what the Gen Zs are telling us is that in as much as they might not be economically disadvantaged, they are still aware and conscious of their democratic rights. They know what they need to do, only that they didn't do the last election. So we are challenged to provide a platform for them to learn, enable, and be able to shape our current political future and setup by voting on issues, by voting on constitutionalism, accountability, and integrity. One of the things that I think the government is missing out is that a lot of people, politicians especially, in this current regime and past, a lot of us are feeling like they don't understand us, but I think we are putting so much.
Dennis, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, and thank you very much. So I think we are putting so much. We should not expect so much from politicians because they are drunk. They are drunk in power, and these are the politicians who have grown up in the system of carrot and stick coming from the executive. So it might be very difficult for them to understand us, but I believe this is the right way to do. This is the correct way to do. Let us build networks where we can teach our youth and our population on our civic rights and the importance of being active citizens. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Let's close this session with the Alumni Network President, Baraza Oliver. You have exactly 2 minutes, so I'll request that you keep it quite precise, so I allow the speakers to make their closing remarks. Anthony Muridhi.
Thank you.
Baraza, just
Thank you so much, Mr. Sakwa.
Baraza, just a minute. Baraza, just meet Anthony. Your hand has been up for a while, so make it just concise. 2 minutes, please. Anthony, we cannot hear you. All right. Yeah. Anthony, we cannot hear you. Allow us to go on to Baraza. Baraza, please unmute and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Sakwa, for this. First, I want to pass my condolences to all young people in Kenya who have injured, who died from spoken. And one thing that I just want to say here is that I have a conviction that Kenya is on the right direction to change. And we are the young people who are supposed to change, to be the change that we want to see. My final recommendation as we host this conversation here in the space as the ELF team, I will suggest that we continuously hold this conversation every now and then, and let us cascade it down to Mashinani, where we have Tunaweza program in the counties. Let us go there to have the youth hall conversations every now and then. I think this can be an annual event for even alumni event during Youth Day, where young people can come together and propose the solutions, because as young people, we don't want to be held the hostage of the past. We want to write our future, and we have the pen and the paper and we are writing it. So we want to write what our children will enjoy, not what our fathers did. So we want a new Kenya, and I believe this is the right direction. And it's my hope and belief that we are going to that direction. Thank you so much, Mr. Sakwa, and thank you for everyone who joined for the conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Baraza, and for your contribution, but more particularly for making your submissions right within time. Lodge, I see someone in the background, and if you could just give them the mic, Bwana Ken Jiru is a listener pale chini. Mr. Ken Jiru, I want Lodge to give you the mic for just 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes, to speak into the topic that we are seeing here, the dreams, the fears, and the convictions. As I do not know which generation you are in, but from your perspective, what is your breakdown of this conversation, the dreams, the fears, and the convictions of reshaping Kenya? As we get the mic to Bwana Ken Jiru, we can be getting one of the closing remarks. I can start with Esther.
Thank you so much, Sakwa. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Esther, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I have 3 key points and recommendations for my parting shot. And the first one is, as I started with, let's remember not to forget why we started fighting in the first place, why we started calling for accountability in the first place, because this is going to be the fuel that is going to drive us to continuously work towards the desires that we have and the dreams that we have for Kenya. And then secondly, let's be willing to reimagine leadership. And by this, I mean reimagine leadership that is actually going to work for the Kenyan people for once, and not necessarily leadership that is completely centered on the leaders themselves. And leadership that is completely gives power to the leaders and strips away power from the people of Kenya. So let's be willing to reimagine leadership and also continuously work towards shaping it to ensure that it's working for the Kenyan people. And finally, let's not accept breadcrumbs because we do deserve better. Thank you.
I like the rhyme of your last sentiments, Esther. Let's not accept breadcrumbs. We deserve better, not breadcrumbs. Mary Wanjiru, your concluding thoughts, and then we come to Brian and Nguka.
Thank you so much, Sakwa. This has been a very interesting and a good conversation. For me, my parting shot is let's all do our part. Haba na haba hujaza kibaba. And another thing is as Karen stated as we began, let us be the change that we want to see and hold our leaders accountable as we hold ourselves accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. Nguka, before Nguka, let's take Karen before Nguka.
Thank you, Sakwa. So I'd like to quote one of the speakers. I can't remember her name, but she spoke and her closing remarks were, we deserve better and we can achieve it together. So I would like that to be my closing remark and just add something to that. That change is an inside job. So I challenge each and every one of us to be that change that we want to see. Before we call for it out here, let us be that, and it will then, come to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Karen. Nguka, your closing thoughts. Then we get to Brian Kithinji, and then Mr. Kenjiru will just sum it up and we close. I don't know if Nguka doesn't have the mic, so let's go to Brian Kithinji as we get. Brian?
Yes, so for me, my final remarks are, number one is, let's remember that all politics is local, that if we want to participate in political processes, we have to go to the ground. Elections, change, everything comes from the ground. So we have to go mobilize our fellow young people, explain to them in jargon, break down what is happening at a national level in a way that they can understand. The second thing is, you cannot have change if you don't know what you are looking to change. So if we want to, if our mantra is we have to change the system, we have to identify which areas in that system we want to change. If we want more jobs, let us mobilize around that. If we want to deal with hunger, let's mobilize around that. If we want to deal with corruption, let's mobilize around that. But just moving around a broad definition of we want change is not going to help. The third thing is we have to be prepared to do the hard work of policy making, i.e., for example, there was a sanitary bills that the Senate had published looking for submissions and comments from young people. I don't know how many people volunteered to do so, and yet that sanitary bills it's going to set up a committee, it's going to nationalize the system of issuing sanitary pads. So there are so many laws, so many policies that are coming up, which we as young people, we have to be prepared to engage, submit memoranda, take part in the public participation forums that are being organized, especially at the community level. And then the last thing is we need to go out and define our narrative. Let us not let the media do it for us. We have already seen the mainstream media doing it, and they've been doing it wrongly as always. We need to go, if we want to have change, and if we want this movement to reach 2027 and have impact on the ballot box, then we need to own it. And one way to own it is, number one, let us go collect data. Let us know the expenses that are being, how our taxpayer money is being spent, and let's explain it to other people. Let's go and read what are some of the powers of the executive, for example, vis-a-vis the powers of the legislature, because there are people still who believe that the work of an MP is to build roads. So once we do all those things, I'm sure that we'll have the change that we desire, even if not now, 3 years later. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Nguka, your final word.
Thank you, every speaker. Thank you, everyone who has attended. My final words will, I'll anchor it on a wise saying that says that if you want to eat an elephant, you have to do it bit by bit. Not that we are elephant eaters, but as we speak right now, the elephant in the room is our governance. And while the Gen Zs, while us as millennials and all other generations could agitate that we want it right now, maybe our journey to reshape Kenya may not really be achieved overnight. I feel that it will require patience, it will require persistence, and the understanding that, the small and consistent actions lead to monumental change. Hence, I want to be very diplomatic and say that, just as eating the elephant that I was mentioned will take, the bits, bite by bite, time by time, building Kenya that we dream of, and what Brian has called the Kenyan dream, will also need us to take it step by step, but most importantly, remain consistent. And as a person of faith, allow me reiterate from Zechariah 4:10 in the good old book, which says that, don't despise small beginnings, because, God rejoices in that. So even as young people of Kenya, as young leaders, as young governance enthusiasts, let us just do the small, things step by step, by remaining objective, and by doing everything that we have been talking about. So together, let us embrace, this journey, and, encourage determination, knowing that each and every one of us, all those generations, all those leaders, every Kenyan plays a crucial role in the collective effort to create our Kenyan dream, just, inclusive, and prosperous Kenya for all. Thank you, Sako.
A big thank you to all of you. I want to give it to Bwana Ken Jiru for a minute to just lend his mind to the topic that we're discussing. A couple of comments. Your friend Kim says young people should be at the heart of leadership formation. They shouldn't divorce themselves from politics. Participate, get involved, push for your interest, be part of efforts geared towards realizing the Kenyan dream. Andre Otieno says politics can be dirty, but how much have we enabled it? Mary-Liz Bibwa, we are asking Gen Z how much they can stay the course, but while at it, let's ask millennials, Gen X, boomers, etc., how even in the current fight they have derailed the movement, taking bribes, settling the Raila Odinga, thinking they get to have a say in the fight as leaders. Robert, the great conversation, my rallying call is that we should not let the immorality of the office bearer determine the fate of any public office. I think I had Karen Munyaya. This is powerful. Reflecting back at the situation, it reveals the potential that the youth have in creating the change that they desire. We are on the right track on matters governance, civic education is, however, highly needed. Anthony Mudridi, okay, that we had mathematics. Joki, I am a Gen X, but I have never been so proud of a generation. Gen Z has given all those Kenyans who are yearning for change hope. Intergenerational conversations will be the dialogues that will bring us together and contribute to the Kenyan dream. Edward Kipkalia says, you cannot effectively engage with a system you don't understand. This foundational knowledge, he believes, is the key to navigating and influencing the complex mechanisms of governance. Eric Odwor, the leadership in Kenya come with entitlement that doesn't have people's interest at heart. Deborah, I think I had read all the others. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Minutes. You're the last speaker, so one and a half minutes, kind.
Okay, thank you for giving me this chance. I actually intended just to listen, but it's been tremendous, and fantastic conversation. And for me, what I can contribute is really motivating young people to continue moving. What the young people are doing in this country is actually godly. Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:12 says, "Do not let anybody look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." So even God calls young people. In fact, I am convinced that it is on the back of young people that any change that is significant comes to a society. Old people can never change. Look at what the politicians are doing now, who I would call my age mates, because Ruto is exactly my age mate. And the Bible also says, to the young, God will give visions, to the old, dreams. I want to transport you to the Garden of Elah, where David met Goliath. If you remember that story, there was the Israeli army and the Goliath's army on the other side, Philistines. And people who were actually battle hardened could not come and face Goliath. Along comes a 17-year-old young man, 17 years, and God allows him to come into the field. So there is something about young people and pushing through the change. And by the way, sometimes there will be casualties. And that must not stop people from marching. Look at the Mau Mau. Mau Mau was Gen Z and a few millennials. Look at the Young Turks. There were Gen Zs and a few millennials. I remember a picture of Martha Karua walking down the steps at 26 to represent Raila Odinga as he was going into detention. Kibaki was 30 in cabinet. Matiba was 20 as a PS. But the reason they were there is because they had been in the struggle and they had been pushing. Look at World War I and II. The pilots were barely 21, 22 years old. Kimathi died at 36. So we must not doubt ourselves. In fact, there's a quote I like of one guy called Paul Bach, who says that young people do not know enough to be prudent. And I say this because of all the questions that you're asking. Young people do not know enough to be prudent, and therefore they attempt the impossible and achieve it generation after generation. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. Trust in God. Look for that gifting that you've been given. And slowly, by the way, leaders will emerge. You don't even have to sit down and ask who's the leader. Slowly, leaders will emerge. For me, not doing what is right and having fear is ushenzi. Again, the Bible says that we've not been given the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of sound mind. That is what we must bring into play. And I want to finally end by saying this, that there will be washenzis. Even during all struggles, there are always people who betray the others. During the Mau Mau, there are people who are basically collaborators. And in all struggles, you'll always find those guys. But one thing I want to tell you and give you the comfort and the confidence that it always happens, the Wangwana, the many, or the ones who are many are the Wangwanas who always win. So keep the faith. Let it be that as a generation, you'll be able to look back and say, we made our contribution. I'm excited at this moment. And for me, I keep telling my age mates that ours is not to try and point a direction. Ours is basically just to try and midwife the Gen Z and the millennials